Hi and welcome to another video. Today's topic will be Linux Mint, especially gaming with Linux Mint. And we'll look at Lutris, which is a wrapper for Epic Game Store, for Steam, for Wine. So you can run all your Windows games on Linux. The most Linux distributions are free. So is Lutris, so you can start from the get-go, so to say. And we'll look at gaming and everyday use. So to start, first of all, we have to choose a distribution, which is a software release of a Linux operating system. So there are different distributions. Some may be suited only for production workloads and don't even come with an UI. So navigation will be quite different, but you can install UIs afterwards. That will be no problems. So I've chosen Linux Mint because it brings with it the most drivers, especially for the AMD APU that I got, the 7840HS from AMD, and for the NVIDIA GPU, the RTX 4060 in this HP 16. And so I've decided for Linux Mint, and it's based on Ubuntu, and I'm pretty familiar with Ubuntu, and I'm used to the package manager apt, so I chose this. But you have to inform yourself which distribution you want to choose in the first run. So distribution, installation. The installation went pretty simple. And for me, as someone who installs Windows on daily basis, it was no problem. But you have to watch which SSDs or which storage drive you connect to your computer, because it's very simple to mess up with that. So you could wipe your Windows installation if you're not carefully, and all data will be lost then. So for the installation you have to format and partition some drive, and this partitioning is not very trivial, but you can Google it and you will soon find out. And for the problems, my Wi-Fi wasn't working, because in the kernel that shipped with Linux Mint ISO, which I installed with Rufus, by the way, the Wi-Fi adapter wouldn't be recognized, so I had to connect my LAN cable. And when I did connect it, I had to Google how to make a kernel update. And it's not very convenient, but I had to do it to make my Wi-Fi work. So, Lutris. Lutris is a wrapper for several kinds of services like Steam, like Epic games. So, for example, you can connect your Epic Games account in Lutris, or you can add a Steam account, or you can run games natively. So, how to start? First of all, we click this plus button, and if we want to install a locally installed game, we then click on locally installed game to add. And I'm sorry, this is in German, because I can't figure out how to change the language in Lutris. So, first of all, we input a game name, for example, Oblivion. So, then we choose a starter Wine. Wine will transfer all calls that a Windows application does to the native Linux command. So the games will be made runnable, and when we use Wine as a starter, we then must choose an executable. So I go to Oblivion and add Oblivion exam. So I have to rename it, so Oblivion 3. Then comes the tricky part. We must choose an appropriate Wine version, and not every game will run with every Wine version, so Oblivion just refused to run with Wine 8.25, and I had to choose Lutris 6.1. And the next steps are to activate DXVK. What will DXVK do? DXVK will transfer all calls that the game makes to the DirectX API to Vulkan. Maybe you're familiar with Vulkan. Vulkan is open source, I believe, graphics API, so it will run on Linux too. So we activate it. Maybe we have to choose another version than the newest one, but I think that Oblivion works with the newest one. Then activate VK30, whatever. VK30 is transferring DirectX 12 calls to Vulkan. So DirectX VK will only support up to DirectX 11 calls. With VKD30 we can make it happen so that we can run DirectX 12 games. Then we choose the VK30 version and activate the DRD3 extras. And this part here will enable DLSS or ray tracing on NVIDIA GPUs, but we don't need to activate it. These are some kind of optimizations that will run games faster, and with enable anti-cheats you can ensure that you can run also your online multiplayer games without having problems with cheat detection. So the next step is in the system settings. So I will leave these open. And the next interesting things are under the display section. You can choose your monitor here, and this kind of stuff, and you can choose a frame limiter, but I don't know how actually. So we'll continue. Here are some audio settings, and the important part is here. You can choose the Vulkan ICD loader, which will determine your GPU that Lutris will use. So I chose NVIDIA, but I could choose AMD. And yeah, I don't actually know what this discrete option does, but I suppose if you use unspecified, it will then use discrete GPU AMD unknown for some reasons and not the RTX 4060. So yeah, I choose the RTX 4060, and here you can use some environment settings. Just Google it when you want to activate some kind of stuff in games and so on. And yeah, so that should do it. And I click save. And this is Oblivion 3. And I click play. And it wants the Oblivion CD, so I prepared it. I will double click this ISO, it will mount, no problem, and we can start Oblivion.
Das habe ich auch schon gehört.
Gibt es Neues aus den anderen Regionen von Tamriel?
So, if it is too loud, I will turn it down something. And yeah, Oblivion is running very fluently, so it's around 120 FPS, I suppose, or more. And it feels like coming home. It's one of my favorite games. And yeah, it's running. Everything is running correctly. And yeah, that's it for Oblivion. So I tried to make it run with reshade and some filters, but it refused to work. So there are some culprits with Linux games, and Oblivion will hopefully work too. So Oblivion is starting. Morrowind, I mean. And again, I'll turn down the audio just a little bit so you can understand me. And load, quick save. Yeah, I got some bugs in the Morrowind, so I will play it on Windows. Maybe those bugs will disappear then. And also, Morrowind is running just fine. The music is just a little bit too loud, I guess. Music, so here we go. And it's running pretty fine. It's a cool, fun game. Yeah, some graphical bugs, but it hasn't something to do with the Linux installation, but with me messing up with Morrowind. So exit, yes. So I also installed Epic Game Store, and for this, for example, what you can do is find Epic Game Store, Epic Games Store. I'll close this tab. So a lot of time will go for fiddling with Linux, because it's not always easy to understand, and it's not always easy to master. So I got some tabs open, and I'm pretty noobish at Linux. So yeah, you can do too. So we download Epic Games Launcher. Here it is. And then we click locally install EGS2. We choose Wine and we go to downloads and Epic installer MSI. I hope it will run. Don't know if MSI will actually run, but I hope so. No, I have to choose another Wine executable, because I really messed up with these. I don't know why I can't just run the newest executables anymore. But here we go. We will install it to Epic Games, whatever. So if we click install, it will also download some kinds of needed Visual Studio updates and so on. So I've installed it, but it should work from what I've read. I have to say that I've installed Epic Games on Lutris Flatpak, but Lutris Flatpak wasn't working good for me, so I chose to install Lutris from the shell. So to do this, just enter sudo apt-get install Lutris, or even easier, just go to the provided store. Just go to the provided store here. Search for Lutris. Yeah, and go to Lutris and install it from here, which is just a simple click. But in Linux, not everything is just a simple click. You will encounter many problems, and you have to download some kinds of libraries to make this work, to make that work. I hope you understand. So I already installed Epic Game Store, and I click on play. So, and then I downloaded Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. Then just simple by downloading and installing from library. So I'll start it. And I'll go to the options. And what I have to say is that with this special game I can't make DLSS working. So I went with Fidelity FX Super Resolution 1.0 instead, which is a quite downgrade in graphical fidelity, but I can't do anything because I don't know anyone who made it work with DLSS in this game, but other games will work with DLSS just fine. So play. Yeah, the graphics look alright, and no graphical bugs. So I will continue. Hope that the game won't crash. Okay, I will turn down the sound again. Sorry, could have done it before, of course. And this runs like shite, so to say, but why is it? So graphics and no, ray tracing isn't enabled. So yeah, you can enable ray tracing too, which will work quite okay. Some games will have problems with it, but I think that it's just because we are recording with OBS and the resources are bound to the OBS, but it will run just fine. It will run at about 60 to 90 FPS, and it's just a shame that I can't show you really the performance, but yeah. So I have to quit it. Yeah, and we got some runtime errors. Okay. So yeah. What we just saw. So I explained what wine is. So just to summarize, wine is some kind of not emulation layer, but it's an call wrapper, so to say. It will delegate calls to from Windows commands to Linux commands. So global setup, that what was stuff that I skipped. So maybe another time. So DLLs, what I mean by this is that you need some kind of libraries like Visual Studio. So again, you do the procedure, but instead of inputting a game, you input the Visual Studio Redis, which you can download from Microsoft. And I'll go with Lutris here, so maybe it will start. Yeah, then you install it and you will be able to run at least 90% of the Windows games. The rest Windows games that you won't be able to run will require the .NET framework, but Wine will install it for you, so no worries. Epic Games I showed you. Then Steam, I'll mention I don't have much games on Steam, so it would be some kind of pointless here. And games I showed you. Performance, yeah, performance will be fine for the most parts, but there will be drops. Sometimes DLSS will be missing in some games. A very important point is that you can't use frame generation right now because NVIDIA doesn't support it on Linux. So performance will be a little less great without DLSS 3. But I hope that in some near future we can use frame generation from AMD. So that won't be a problem anymore. And don't use Flatpak version because I got massive problems. So Flatpak couldn't recognize my GPU and some kind of stuff that I won't mention here. So pros and cons. Pro 1, no Windows required. So you're tired of using Windows because it's full of stuff that will make your PC run slow. So no Windows required. Performance is often on par. Most games will run just fine on Linux. Some games will need a little tweaks to be able to run and to run properly fast. So that is this. And Linux is open source, so you can customize the whole operating system for your likings. But if you customize an operating system, you know what will happen. Stuff will break. So it's open source, but it runs stable. It's customizable, like I mentioned. It has a package manager. Most distributions will have a package manager. The package manager will be different in each distribution, but you'll get used to it. It's like I showed you. It's this kind of command. So you type sudo to gain access to admin rights. Then you type apt-get, that's the apt package manager, then install, and whatever you want to install will follow, and remove will uninstall the package, but be careful with removes, because if you remove a package, it can happen that other packages will be removed that other packages will need. So just be careful what you're doing and think for yourself what each command does. So it's a little learning curve for noobs like me, but I hope with time I'll get used to it and you can get used to it too. So not every problem can be solved, like that DLSS3 don't work will maybe never be solved, so reshade doesn't work properly. Yeah, and there is stuff that's only available on Windows, like overclocking with an UI. Overclocking with text will work just fine on Linux. So what I can suggest for you is, if you want to overclock on Linux, then you should overclock in Windows first, so you know what your card is capable of, and then you can just input these values in some text files and save it, and you underclock or overclock or undervolt in Linux too. So yeah, it works when it works. That means that for most part Linux is stable, you won't experience crashes so often, but that is if you don't modify the Linux or you don't mess up with, I don't know, packages or with kernels or drivers or so on. So that's it here for today. I hope you had fun, and I hope you will actually like Linux like I do, and for the most parts I'll stay on Windows because I'm really used to it. It has got a clicky UI, so I know where to find things, and I know if I double click some file it will open no matter what, and if I install a game it will be installed, and dependencies comes later and so on. But Linux will have a steep learning curve, but I think it's usable. So thank you for watching and have a great time. Bye bye.